A Norm Smith medalist is on the move. Christian Petracca is now a Gold Coast Sun. Are we going to see the best of Christian at the Suns? Or is just the last 12 months started to show that CP5 is still a handy player, but not quite Norm Smith quality anymore? We're going to look at what this trade means for Christian, what it means for the club he's left in Melbourne, where he's landed at the Gold Coast Suns, and from an AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach perspective, we've got you covered with our insights about how this could help you or create some options around the move for these fantasy formats in 2026. I think we've got to put this year into some level of context. It's not any level of protecting, but we've got to remember that not even 18 months ago, he was in an equivalent of a car crash style injury out on a football field that ruled him out for the better half of the 2024 season and did take some time through the preseason of the 2025 year to build back up to himself. Alongside this, he wanted out of the club 12 months ago, but was forced to stay. Alongside that, some uncertainty about role. We saw him pick up forward status in fantasy footy because he spent a lot of time in the year, early days, forward of the ball. Was that building his confidence in his body, fitness base? Nothing's really publicly come out and said about that. Then he goes into the midfield, and then in the latter portions of the year, it ultimately ends really pear-shaped for Simon Goodwin, with him being sacked from the club and a caretaker coach comes in. So it doesn't mean we put an asterisk on this year, because we do need to factor all these things, especially when we consider his age, that he is sitting at 29 years of age. But we do need to put it as a consideration into how we view this year. I don't think it's as bad as everyone thinks it is, but I also think we need to have some careful considerations through it too. What does this mean for Melbourne? Well, with the move of Christian and also his beloved premiership teammate in Clayton Oliver out, this well and truly just puts a stamp on they are now regenerating the list. Put whatever restump, restock, rebuild, whatever reword you want on this, they are getting out of this middling spot they were in, which was an older list in part and some elite young talent, but not really strong enough in any of these elements to be pushing for finals. Now it's just clear. They're giving Stephen King clear air. They're maximising, especially with Christian, the asset that a player could be to be able to get them back into a premiership and finals tilt as soon as possible. And I think they've done a pretty reasonable job getting some nice collateral back for Christian. What does this mean for them? Well, CP's that beautiful modern midfielder, beautifully skilled, can put him forward 50 of the ball, can take a mark, can use that frame to be able to create isolation moments that make opposition defenders worry, and then has got enough athleticism and power and speed to make him a dangerous matchup inside forward 50. Then you throw him in that midfield. He's got nice clearance craft about him, really tough matchup at stoppage, really difficult player that if he gets some separation, he can get out of that congestion and be able to send that ball deep inside forward 50 with penetration and with precision. It's a really nice, rare combination that peak Petracca is absolutely one of the more enjoyable and weaponizing players in the AFL at the moment. For Melbourne, the rebuild is on, and I'm fascinated to see how they choose this midfield. I can look at it now, again, without knowing what they're going to get at the draft, and we'll talk about some options they might do in a moment. But, and again, really, you should go and check out a Dylan Alexander. He's a great friend of the channel, but also one of the best at understanding drafts, who the players are, and really sharp and switched on to knowing where it can all come together. But I look at this and I feel like already they've got a pretty solid five to build around. Pickett is your dynamic X-factor, skillful player. They could choose to put Rivers in there if they like. They can throw him off halfback too, but I think it's an option that they can explore. The trade of Steele, I think, is a masterstroke. You get a Clayton Oliver clone in a lot of different areas with a little bit more defence and no off-field worry, so I think that's great for them. Viney, again, an absolute soldier of the club and can play the defensive-minded stuff as well as win you the ball at stoppage. And then you've got a little bit more height and power to go with it. Again, remembering Steele can play some defensive elements to the game, so too can Viney. You get a Harvey Langford and you've got this beautiful strike power mid that can absolutely use not only his physical frame, but his skill set to really get some penetration through some of those kicks as well. It's actually a pretty nice combination. It's not the next premiership midfield combination. They'll have some changes before that, but they're going to be competitive enough this year with some nice old hands and then some exciting youth that's coming through, let alone what they might do with pick 7 and 8. They'll slide a little bit with academy bids, etc. But do they go for a key defender like a Xavier Taylor, probably the best key defender in the draft? Do they protect the move of May and Lever for the future? That could be in the mix. Do they want another tall, reliable mid in a Dyson Sharp? Not so sure they'll need it with a Langford, but it sits there. Do they go for more of a playmaker off half back like a Josh Lindsay, let alone the more dynamic mids that can push through the forward line as well, like a Sam Grill or a Sam Cumming? In short, with these two picks, they've got options. A Xavier Lindsay, who they got last year, could float through here as well. A Caleb Windsor could throw it through there. They're fine on the youthful side of things. Just going to have to be a little bit more patient again. So I'm fascinated to see how these elements all sit together under a Stephen King coach system, let alone the players they want to use. Then let's talk about Gold Coast. How strong do you want to get? Like, really? There's one area of the ground that Gold Coast doesn't have something on the either well and truly elite or pushing the elite territories. That's a small forward. They just don't have that. They've got nice options, but nothing elite. Not the Rankin, not the Pickett, not the Bolton. Nothing quite like that. A Watson. Just nothing elite. That in the ball hits the deck, you're like, oh, it's on here. They don't have that. But everything else they got. Elite key position players across all 3 lines of the ground. They've got elite outside ball users. They've got great stoppers in the defensive half, great ball winners and playmakers, and great variations in all area of their list. That's the only spot. So where they're already strong, they're about to get even stronger. And that's not a bad thing. They have so many weapons now that Petracca especially can add another weaponized dynamic for them. They can choose to put him inside forward 50. And now all of a sudden, Ben King's got a different type of forward to work with here. Yes, they've lost to Ben Ainsworth, but Ben Long can be very aggressive in how he limits opposition players being able to create rebound 50s. He's really smart and crafty like that. They've got a Walter or Reed combination they could really investigate which of these tools that they choose to go for, let alone a Jamara Ugle-Hagan. So they've got weapons for days. And the thought that track could be able to be sliding under the radar is absolutely maddening in that regard. Well, think about it now in the midfield, where they've got the reigning Brownlow medalist in Matt Rowell. They've got a guy who also went deep into Brownlow contentions in Noah Anderson, who's probably one of the best work rate mids in the comp. Is it crazy to think that track is now the 3rd best mid at the Gold Coast? Wild. What is the split going to look like? They were very heavy last year on Rowell and Anderson, both 80% centre bounce attendances for both. And then it kind of really opened up. Miller was in the low 50s. Humphrey was in the high 30s. I could probably see just Rowell's maybe dropping a touch. Anderson's is probably the one I think's most likely to be impacted by it, probably because he's more versatile to play off wings, high half forwards, still get involved in the game in other arenas for sure, because I still think they want to keep Miller's defensive work rate in and around the midfield, and I think they want to keep Humphrey up there too. There was definitely a desire for him to try to get out and get more opportunity and get a better paycheck to come. So I think they want to manage that, but that feels like the 5. Anderson, Rowell, Miller, Humphrey, and Petracca. Miller's critical because he offers something defensively that, in terms of mindset, that the others can do, but certainly aren't as elite at. is what he is. So I feel like that's their 5, they're set. There was a 66% CBA ratio for track this year. I think it's going to get closer to 50-50, but that's more just about how do the Gold Coast Suns manage that. What does this mean for us in fantasy footy? Well, I'm projecting that he's going to have mid-forward status to start this upcoming season. And as I look at him, as I look at his price point, as I look about what he has been, and then I'm starting to think about what could be. Because between 2021 and 2023, he's going from a 100 to 111 average in AFL Fantasy, and he's going between a 109 and a 118 in SuperCoach. So elite numbers, especially in a year or two of those where he's around the marks for forward eligibility. And while I look at the fact that this year he goes at a 90 in fantasy with 8 tons, 1 over 120, a 96 in SuperCoach with 8 tons, 3 over 120, I look at what he's done and I go, I feel like he's not going to burn you as a starter in Classic. I don't see that coming down the corridor of time here. But I also don't see him getting back to those peak 118 SuperCoach, 110 plus fantasy. Because again, game style, situation in the midfield, all the things, and politely competition of market share was never nearly as strong as what I think it's going to be at the Gold Coast Suns. So I don't see a drastic regression. So I don't think he's going to be a bad option to consider. But a 90 in fantasy, a 96 in SuperCoach, if you're starting that, you want to be confident about 2 things. One, that he's a top 5 midfielder, forward for the rest of the year. And if you're going to do that, where are you going to chase value in the other parts of your ground? Because if you're normally picking a 90 in fantasy and 96 in SuperCoach, you're kind of thinking you're going to pick a top of the line guy or potential of it. Where's your value coming in 2026? Because I look at the forward lines and go, well, I think Dev Robertson's going to be a really nice pick and should have forward status when he lands at West Coast as a delisted free agent. Mateus Philippou, if he can be fit, Philippou has all the markings if he's in that midfield of going 85 plus and at a way cheaper price point, let alone his new teammate now and Sam Flanders, who will, alongside Nazai Wanganeen-Millera, own that midfield grouping. He's going to be one of the more easy picks to go this year. There's Harry Sheasel, I think, is getting forward status. So where you pick your value might inform the selections you get. Do you go deeper and heavier in other lines, and as a result, track gets missed? To me, I don't think starting him is going to burn you, but I don't think it's going to be a season-making decision either. That's why, for me, the player in that spot, I go, look, maybe if he flies out of the gate in opening round, maybe if the fixture's favourable again for the Suns early days, yeah, I could do that. But there's still some things that I want to see in terms of the mid-forward split. Who else we get in that forward line? Where else the value emerges? Because we will keep seeing it pop up through what lands on the trades from a draft perspective, who develops in new roles and functions in the preseason. So much is unknown. So he's absolutely going to be one of the best forwards rolling around. No question about it. It's just to be, is it the right choice to start it with the value that we project that we're probably going to get? So a good pick, probably not a season maker to start with, but things can change, right? He drops a 130 on your head in opening round. All of a sudden, maybe they have West Coast, North Melbourne, Carlton early on, Melbourne early on. Man, that fixture might be so good that with that score advancement, you just have to run it. Lots to do. It's the middle of October. You don't have to lock him out at all. But I'm just putting a flag on. I don't see him ascending to the heights he has. I still think he's going to be a nice pick. We'll probably want to own him in Classic at some point if he has that forward status that I'm projecting that he has. But maybe not a starter. But let's not rule that out just yet. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'd love to know, what's your projected average range for Christian Petracca in 2026? You're only allowed a range of 5 points too. So you can't be like, 85 to 130. Don't do that stupid stuff. You've got a 5-point range. I'd love to see them in the comments section of this video. What is your 5-point range that you think track could average this year? If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can get in touch with us across social media, send us a message, send us a post. We'd love to know your thoughts on that too. Every single player that's moved clubs this trade and free agency period, there's an episode on this channel about them, what we think it's going to mean for them, where they've landed, where they've left, and give you our fantasy take early for the 2026 Fantasy and SuperCoach season. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for getting involved in the conversation this off-season. We can't wait to be back with you again real soon on the channel, talking all things fantasy footy.